Welcome back to Sandy and Sean. Of course, my name's Sean Droto. We're at Radio Row down at Super Bowl 58 in Las Vegas for the first time. We have, of course, a member of the media who would be familiar with how this works. Megan Olivi, you've seen her, of course, on the sideline of NFL games, also over at ESPN covering the UFC, but you live here.
I do.
And so this has obviously been something that people in Vegas and the city itself has been dreaming about for decades as sports starts to, trickle into Las Vegas. And now, of course, it is a flood.
No, it feels like we are a true sports city now. And to be able to showcase what this city has with something like the Super Bowl is tremendous. I mean, we had F1 a couple of months ago, and now we have the Super Bowl. But this is a great town for more than just what Vegas is known for, right? We know that there's gambling, there's nightclubs, but there's amazing nature here. This is, I have to say, one of the best food cities in the entire country. So there's so much for people to be able to experience here as well as the game. And I don't know if there's a better host city, honestly, than Las Vegas. This is a town with beautiful hotels, beautiful ventures that you can be a part of, and so many unique experiences for fans and players alike.
Yeah, and I think the same thing coming here would. It was announced in Vegas. It made a lot of sense because this is a city that's used to throwing huge events. And of course, the Super Bowl tends to dominate. It blots out the sun in wherever city you're at. And that can always be challenging for certain host cities. In Vegas's case, you have some of the world's largest hotels all in one street. It actually makes this process rather convenient. I've been to a lot of the Super Bowls, and thus far, it's early, but it doesn't feel like Vegas is going to get overwhelmed. This is what they do.
No, exactly. And we're here inside the Mandalay Bay, and you could walk to Allegiant Stadium from here, but you could also have breakfast. You could place a bet. You could do whatever you want before you head on over to the game or the stadium for whatever it might be. And so this is a city that's used to big things and embraces big things. It's not a city that really crumbles under the pressure of it. And so everyone sort of steps up their game in different capacities. And I think that we're going to see a lot more big events here in Las Vegas, especially more Super Bowls to come.
Well, and this is obviously a big Super Bowl rematch from a couple years ago, but amazingly, if you look on offense on both of these two teams in the last Super Bowl, only 6 players, 6 in total, are on both the San Francisco and Kansas City offenses. So the turnover in the NFL is very rapid. And I think when people look at this matchup, they're thinking, oh, it's the same old teams again. It really isn't.
Right. No, it's not. I mean, Jimmy G might be here in the city, but he's not playing in the game this time around. You know what I'm saying? But to see somebody like George Kittle, who, had those impactful comments on the sidelines, to see him be able to return, I think is really important. But I feel like there's been something different about this season for some reason, that people are more invested or more involved in their particular teams. So I think it's great. I think people have been rooting for the 49ers to be here for the entirety of the season. Now that they are, they're obviously thrilled. And then the Chiefs pulled off what a lot of people didn't think that they could. So I think there's interest and intrigue for a lot of different reasons, but you're right. It is not those same teams from a couple of years ago. They are very different. I mean, Brock Purdy himself, who would have expected that this is where he was going to be after that draft pick?
Right. And as they say, you want to be the champ, you got to beat the champs.
Yep.
Well, that's what a couple teams have run into with the Chiefs. It's not as easy as you might think, and it may not be as well. But heading to that fight reference, of course, you are on the UFC broadcast with ESPN. You've been involved in that community, in that industry for a really long time.
Yeah.
A lot of that, and I'm excited to talk to you about it because a lot of it happens here in Vegas.
Yes.
And a lot of that history is where we are back in Colorado. UFC 1 was at the Old Nickel Sports Arena. Many fighters from Colorado are out there. We just saw Brandon Royval get his crack a little bit ago. Justin Gaethje, of course, is from Colorado. And a lot of the big names train there too at training at altitude. Yeah. Kamaru Usman trains there as well. Misha Tate famously did over the years. So when you look at the growth of USC and now finding itself, with the partnership with ESPN, from maybe where it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the growth continues. You'd think there was maybe a part where it stalled. It hasn't stalled. And I think now, not only is it really supplanted boxing in the minds of fight fans everywhere, but it's also just become part of the discourse. And I think for a while, it was hard to get that penetration. Now the UFC, everyone knows about it.
I think that COVID was so difficult for so many reasons on sports, but it actually was a huge push for the UFC. We were on Fight Island that people first laughed at when they heard the idea, and we truly made it happen. And for a long time, many months, we were the only sporting event on television. So to be able to, on Saturday night, have something when everybody was stuck at home, that's, I think, what really helped, especially in the past 3 or 4 years, push things forward. I come across so many people who say, I discovered you guys during COVID. I would have never watched you before. And now I'm obsessed. I don't miss a fight. That's amazing. And yes, it wasn't necessarily the ideal circumstance. However, we made the best of what we could. Our athletes stepped up the things that they had to do, from quarantine to testing, to be able to compete, to entertain the world. I mean, it was massive. And so I think the growth just keeps coming, because now we've opened up the doors to so many new fans, and they're telling their friends. And now that we're back on the road visiting different cities, yes, Las Vegas is our home, the fight capital of the world. But you mentioned places like Denver. We're going, to New Jersey, to Florida, to Texas, to all around the world. I mean, we had many international pay-per-views just this year. And so I think that the growth will never end, but it's nice when we get to return to cities that have been so good to us. Denver, you mentioned, has been incredible to the UFC. My own husband trained there for a couple of fights. And in fact, he used to work with Lauren Landau, and that's how he met Christian McCaffrey. And so those two, my husband Joseph and Christian, got to know each other at Lauren's. And so it's a really great, tight-knit community of athletes as well, who respect what one another do. And it's kind of fun to see, people who are playing in the Super Bowl, or people who are competing on the world's biggest stage, who are like, man, these flyweights are so cool.
Oh, right.
125 pounds. Right. And here they are kind of thinking like, man, they're tough. I want to be like them. So it's really neat to watch that unfold in real time.
And that part is interesting, because you're right, that there's a bunch of different, you think about the NFL, right? At a certain point, if you're not big enough, you're not playing.
Right, yeah.
End of story. That's not necessarily the case in the UFC, in the fight game. We're talking with Megan Olivi, of course, the host of The Exchange with Megan Olivi, too, where you get an opportunity to sit down with some of the best. And over at Mile High Sports, we have our pal, Josh Friend, who hosts the program for us as well.
So, Friend, what can he do?
Yeah, exactly. So, it's pretty intertwined in what we do as well. And it is fascinating to see that, because you're right. The NFL part of it is exciting, and that's why we're out here. But there's also the opportunity to be exposed to a lot of other sports, a lot of other angles. We're talking about, restaurants. We're talking about all the things that the Super Bowl brings in, and it's a joke, right? Well, people saying whatever their industry, this is the Super Bowl of our industry.
Yeah.
Well, the Super Bowl of our industry, whatever it is actually the Super Bowl. And so that's where we're here right now. So what's next? Obviously, you're splitting. The season runs finally.
Yeah.
You get a break from the NFL side.
Yes.
Now just all the way in the fight game for the rest of the spring and summer.
Yes. So the UFC, we have no season. So we do over 40 weeks of events. And so I'm really fortunate to be a part of a large majority of those. We have a fight this Saturday. So a little appetizer for the Super Bowl. So here in Las Vegas, I'm sure we'll get lots of people who are here in town for the event to be able to watch that and watch our athletes shine on their stage. And so we just continue. We have a pay-per-view coming up next weekend, where Alexander Volkanovski, one of the pound-for-pound best in the entire world, puts his featherweight title on the line. So there's some great matchups coming up. A huge one in Miami for UFC 299. And I just have to say, the last time we went to Miami was last year, and it was, I think, the first time in almost 20 years. I have never seen more NFL players in the crowd and more excited than we had for our Miami fight. So I'm really thrilled to see, people I work with on the field come and see what our athletes can do in the octagon. So it's really exciting. And I just think that seeing that level of respect between everybody, again, is just like what makes me feel so blessed to be able to do the jobs that I do.
Yeah, you talk about Volkanovski, obviously, in another sort of Denver connection. Jamal Murray, the Denver Nuggets star, trained with Volkanovski, who actually walked out with him at one of his fights not that long ago. And so you start seeing more of a crossover, because the athleticism is the athleticism, and the fitness level for UFC is remarkable. And for a lot of athletes, some of that translates.
Absolutely. I mean, I just worked with Max Crosby. I did a joint interview with he and our former champion, Sean Strickland. Max, obviously, tremendous player in the NFL, and he accredits a lot of that to doing boxing training several times a week and almost every day in the offseason. He said, listen, if I can get into boxing range, learn how to use my length, learn how to use my hand speed and my footwork, that only helps in the pass rush game. And obviously, you see how well Max Crosby performs. He also talks about the cardio. He said, listen, boxing cardio is different than NFL cardio. So when I am prepared to go many rounds in a boxing ring, then I can be assured that I will be just fine for every second of every game.
Yeah, obviously, if things are going right, you get longer breaks when the offense is on the field, unless they're turning the ball over.
Exactly.
And then you go right back on. That's more of a, it's been a problem that both the Broncos and Raiders have had of late, obviously.
That final game of the season, I was a sideline reporter for that one. So
yeah,
yes.
Right. High quality football in that one for sure. But it's the way it goes. So, Megan, where can people find you to find more about what you're doing, your show?
Sure. Yes.
All of that.
So I'm really fortunate. You can find my content on ESPN Plus. So I host a UFC pre-show for every pay-per-view there. The UFC's website, as well as their YouTube channel, will have all of my extended sit-downs. And then, of course, you can check out my Instagram at Megan Olivi for a little bit more content and links to everything that we put out. So
Perfect.
It's, yeah, really exciting.
That's great. Megan Olivi, the last name is Olivi, of course, working for NFL Fox Sports, UFC with ESPN, and obviously that continues to grow and grow. Make sure you check out the exchange with Megan Olivi, as you pointed right there. You can get it on ESPN Plus, or check out before any of the fights, and obviously you get to see more of those now on ESPN as well. So it's pretty cool. Even if you're not getting the pay-per-view, you can get a little taste, get a little sample, see if you like it. And then I'll admit it's happened at times where I've maybe watched some of it and then then I'm in, and then I'm clicking to buy it. I'm watching the rest of it. It happens. So this is a treat to be able to talk to you. Thanks for sitting down with us. There's a lot of commonalities here, and it's really cool to see the connections between Denver and Vegas now so geographically close, and even especially at the NFL level.
Yeah.
Raiders and the Broncos stay rivals, but they've never literally been closer than they are now.
Exactly.
So it's a great time for fans too. And
so much.
Maybe they'll crawl out of the cellar eventually if the Chiefs are done winning Super Bowls. We'll find out. Yeah, we'll find out. Thanks so much. We're going to appreciate it.